Okay, the table you've got testing insulators data should look exactly like this one. So you've got a column for time in minutes, and you've got columns for the temperature, the water temperature in the different insulators, cotton wool, foam, and paper. So we're going to entering the data into the columns now. The best way to do this is to work down the column, and you can make it a bit easier for yourself by just hitting the enter key to go down to the next row. So type the number, hit enter, and that will move down to the next cell. So let's speed this up a little bit. Okay, that's all our data entered to the table now. The next step will be to create a graph, and we want to create a line graph here because we've got continuous data values that are changing over time. So we want to select all the data in the table, and then from the insert menu we want to choose chart. Now, lucky for us, the default option is a line graph, and it looks pretty good, but we're just going to make a few changes to make it as clear as possible. So firstly, we're going to change the title. So if you just double click on the title of the graph, that also brings up a little menu on the side there, and you can type in either in the title itself or in that title text box an appropriate title for the graph. In this case, something like change in water temperature over time using 3 different insulators. So something quite descriptive that makes it clear what the table is showing. Okay, the label for the horizontal axis is already there, but we're going to need to add one for the vertical axis. So this should just be water temperature, and just remember to include the units that this axis is showing, which is degrees Celsius. The next step will be to change the range of values that are shown on that vertical axis. At the moment they start from 0, but our data only needs to go down to about 30. So we're going to set a maximum and minimum value. We're going to set the maximum of 100 because that's about where our water temperatures start from. And we're going to set a minimum value of 20 degrees. This is just going to spread our data out a little bit and hopefully make the graph a bit clearer as well. What we'll do next is to change the number of grid lines that are shown on that vertical axis to make the graph a little bit easier to read. This can be a little bit of a process of trial and error, but in this case, if we add 9 grid lines, that'll give us a line for each 10-degree increment on that graph. That makes it quite easy to read. We'll go through those same steps for the horizontal axis. So we need to set a maximum and minimum value. So our maximum value for time, the horizontal axis, is 15. So we'll type that in, and then the minimum, the starting time was 0. But that's given us some strange values there on those grid lines. So let's change those. This can be a little bit of trial and error, but we just want to find a number of grid lines where we've got whole numbers and the axis is divided up into I guess logical values. So if we settle with 4 grid lines, that gives us one for 5, 10, and 15 minutes. But we can also add some minor grid lines in there as well. So if we add 4 minor grid lines, you can see there that we've got those lighter grid lines drawn in, one for each minute increment, which makes it really nice and easy to read. And we could do the same thing for the vertical axis there. If we just add in 1 minor grid line, that gives us a line for each 5-degree increment. Alright, the very last thing we're going to do is just change the position of that legend. We're going to move it from being underneath the title to the right hand side, just to a more appropriate spot. And that's it.